Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 10 of the Alfa Romeo Alpha International Championship. We are on the sunny circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia circuit. I think I've got the order right there, probably haven't. For round 10. Getting here before we do in the F1 world. We are here with just over 10 minutes to go in qualifying. It is Whitney who currently sits on provisional pole. We are yet to see an appearance from either Colin Keneath or Matt Daly, so it is Whitney who sits on pole by a comfortable, 1.2 seconds, and looking very comfortable indeed on pole at the moment. But look at that midfield, all the way from James Atkins down to Andrew Whitehead, I believe that is. No, it is Rob Whitney, separated by only a few tenths of a second. So the midfield battle forming up nicely already this early on in the weekend. As we see just a little bit of traffic in the way for Barry Clayton there. We'll go on board with him as he heads down towards Sector 3 now, the end of the back straight. And he's a little bit worse off for it on this lap as a result of the traffic in front. That is Paul Brady, car in front. Of course, Paul does not have to concede at all. He's on his own fast lap at the moment. So it's just about playing the game and finding the right points at which to get on track to set your fast lap. So yes, here at Barcelona for the first time in the year before F1, and for the first time in these new cars as well. So it'll be good to see how these very powerful high downforce cars perform on this circuit, as I think we might go on board with James Atkins. James Atkins looking very pacey indeed. I've forgotten again, I'm going to do it in between qualifying and the race, James. I'm going to put your car livery on. I apologise. I've said it 3 races in a row now, 3 single-seater races in a row, which is about 6 weeks. And I have failed to do so every single time. So currently, right now, in the background, I am downloading the new car mod. So for race 1, James Atkins, you will have a livery. But anyway, you're currently on for a fairly decent lap. You've had to enter the pits, unfortunately, I imagine, to abandon that lap, because there was a purple sector in there through sector 2, 32.8, and that is obviously the best from this session so far. But all the drivers looking to be kind of settling into a bit of a rhythm now as Alex Smith joins us and posts to 129.8, the second driver below the 130 mark there. James Atkins getting perilously close to that as well. But yes, all the drivers look like they've had a decent amount of practice by the look of things, because we have all the way down from Willingless down to John Baker. Everyone is within a couple of seconds. John Baker slowest on track at the moment, 131.6, but only by a couple of tenths of a second. Really is quite a battle forming up, especially in the AM running as well. So it'll be good to see how this progresses throughout the weekend. Of course, a very technical little circuit is the Catalonia Trap. You have to watch out for the likes of Sector 3, the chicane complex from about turn 11 is where it starts to get difficult in my personal experience, all the way to the end, turn 16 there. Of course, with that left-right chicane at the very end of the circuit, just to throw a final spanner into the works on the lap, and the one to watch out for as well, turn 7, turn 8. A very technical high-speed part of the circuit. Likewise on the high speed is turn 3. Don't over-cookie ties too much. We have found that the soft compound tyre has been very hard-wearing, very comfortable on most tracks, but maybe with 36 degrees track temperature here, we might start to see some troubles a little bit, especially around sector 1. Might start to see a bit of preservation. It's gone wrong for Steve Knight there on the very last corner, the exit of turn 16. It all goes wrong, unfortunately, for him, and he has to abandon this lap. No one's running on for a quick lap at the moment, so we'll go on board with William Bliss, our current original pole sitter. He's about 4 tenths up on Barry Clayton in P2 at the moment. Those who are kind of battling out amongst themselves, as we see John Baker, very nice improvement from him, at 130.5. That puts him on top in the AM running at the moment. He's doing a very nice job there. It doesn't apologies, James Atkins, you are currently on top by about 5 tenths of a second, and without a livery as well. I keep saying it, I will remind myself enough to the point where you'll have a livery for race 1, I promise you that, James. But you see there through the speed trap, 181 miles an hour. These cars are absolutely flying. Their speeds of near enough 300 kilometers an hour. That's not too far off F1 at all. So these cars looking very comfortable on this circuit. Of course, they visit this type of track very frequently indeed. As we see, they've been really going at it in this qualifying session so far. The likes of Willington, James Atkins and Barry Clayton setting 9 qualifying laps so far. Of course, this is a 25-minute session. We weren't able to join you for the full experience. Steam Guard decided to kick me out of my account with that all been rectified now, as Barry Clayton looks like it's gone a little bit wrong for him as he pushes to try and take the original pole away from Willing Bliss. He's gone wrong. He's gone off at turn 3. By the looks of things, I imagine that was probably the car getting upset at turn 2. If you push it a little bit too hard right over the sausage curb, you're all upset for the entry into turn 3, and then you're running into the gravel there. I wouldn't be too surprised if that's what's happened. Unfortunately, we didn't quite catch a glimpse of that. As we go on board with Alex Smith. Alex Smith currently competing for that pole position, but that won't be helping matters at all. I mentioned turn 7, turns 8, where it can go a little bit wrong, and it did so for Alex Smith. He was able to recover the car and carry on, which is good to see, but riding over the curves, riding over that gravel, that will knock his confidence just that little bit now, as we have the alternate layout, of course, for the circuit this year. Things have changed a little bit on this track to try and promote a little bit of overtaking. We'll see if that works. It's on the entry to Sector 3, heading into Turn 10. I can't remember too much. I'm not sure anyone can remember too much, to be honest, of the Spanish Grand Prix in 2021. I'm sure it was a relatively decent race, but of course with everything else going on in the season, it was probably a bit of a misnomer, if you will. So I can't remember too much what type of effect it had on the racing in F1, but I imagine we'll, as we seem to have a bit more battling going on in the AROC racing leagues, we'll probably see a little bit more going on in this session this evening, as we see Guy Strawberry making a very nice improvement indeed. Got 130.3 on the board for him now, as he goes personal best in Sector 2 and Sector 3. The very competitive Sector 3 actually looking quite racy indeed. Of course, running the soft compound tyres, 10 laps on the board for him as well. Looks like he's running a little bit of a higher downforce setup in comparison to everyone else, a couple of kilometres off the pace in the speed trap, but it seems to be working for him so far. So stick with the guy, and some nice progress coming through there, it seems, as we have he's carrying on this qualifying stint. He's not quite got the pace on this lap, unfortunately for him, but with 5 minutes to go, still a couple of attempts left in there. As we go back on board with James Atkins. James Atkins improving in the final sector on his previous attempt there. 130.9, not 130.9 through sector 3, apologies. Yes, a 30.9 through sector 3 for James Atkins this time, as he starts to get those tyres ready for a final push in qualifying. So let's see how he does through sector 1, and it's not quite there for him, unfortunately. 2 seconds off where he needs to be at the moment, about 8 tenths where he needs to be if he wants to get on the front row, about 8 tenths, or 8 hundredths of a second rather, off where he needs to be if he wants to do that. But we'll go back on board with Guy Swarbrick actually, because Guy is looking very competitive indeed on this lap. 33.5 through sector 2, that is a personal best as he comes round the final corner now. Turn 16, the right hander come across the line. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite there in sector 1 or sector 3, so it's not going to be, I imagine the tyres not quite happy with that one, even though the fuel loads will be getting lighter through the session. And actually, Alex Smith, in his 10 laps, it looks like he's carrying quite a bit of downforce as he's exiting the pit now, so we'll go back on board with him. 280 kilometers an hour through these speed traps. That might prove, if it works in qualifying for him, which it seems to be doing so, he's a P4 at the moment on the second row of the grid, but that could prove a little bit detrimental in the race. Of course, he will have the benefit of the push-to-pass system and the slipstream, which is probably what he's banking on to try and keep up with the cars around him, but it seems to be that he's carrying quite a lot of downforce. Seems to be quite a bit of rear wing on that car. So that'll be one to watch throughout the race. Let's see, is a bit of an alternate strategy in terms of the setup is going to make the difference. Is that going to make the difference in this race? Who knows? Maybe it's going to look after the tyres better. Maybe it's going to allow him to get a little bit more aggressive on corner entry. Who knows at this stage in the race? We haven't been watching practice, unfortunately. Although it would be great if we did. If I could just spend the week watching practice and watching some cars go around Catalonia. There are far worse things to spend your time doing. But we'll go back on board with James Atkins, because we won't actually. We'll in a second. We're going to go on board with Colin Keefe. Colin Keefe, as I see, has adopted the Matt Daly strategy of qualifying, which is wait until the last 3 minutes of the session, join, and then get ready to set an absolutely blistering lap, we believe. Who knows? Will it be a redemption day for Colin Keefe this late on in qualifying? Of course, it all went a bit wrong for him at the end of last weekend's, or the fortnight ago's running. Qualifying went well, race 1 went well, but unfortunately for Colin, it was a disaster, the likes we have rarely seen from Colin Keefe, and he had to abandon his running in that race, round 9. So maybe this will be a bit of a redemption arc for him as he heads into this evening's running. We haven't seen John Cole actually. So I believe is his current championship contender, or championship fight, or championship rival, if you will. There we go, there's the word I was looking for, but I was wrong, of course. I'm in touring car mode because unfortunately I missed last week's running of the touring car race. It is, of course, Will Inglis, his nearest competitor, who's currently sat on pole here, trying to carry on the championship charge as Rob Whitney makes a nice bit of improvement there to go 6th fastest at 1:30.4, only 300ths of a second ahead of Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews will be seeing that, and I imagine will be grating his teeth just a little bit, wanting to get back out on track. Is he on track at the moment? I believe he is. Yes, he is, as he comes towards the end of a warm-up lap by the looks of things. So it's certainly not clear waters yet for Rob Whitney. Likewise, it's not clear waters yet for Will Inglis as he gets ready to start his final qualifying charge, or what will be either his last or his penultimate qualifying charge, because Colin Knief is heading round through Sector 2 as we speak. Stay on board actually with Will Inglis. He heads round through Sector 1 for what could be the final time in this session. Does just about edge out his personal best time by 0.004 of a second. So he's responded to the charge of Colin Knief joining this session. He's responded to that challenge. He is getting ready to fight for this pole position as we head into this evening's racing, and he means business. Even that little 0.004 of a second could make all the difference as we come towards the end of this qualifying session. Now we've seen just how close it can be in previous rounds. Rides over the gravel just a little bit as he heads up through turn 7, turns 8, and has to abandon this lap, unfortunately, carrying a little bit too much speed potentially. The car getting a bit upset through turn 7, turn 8, and the car just wasn't ready for him as he headed into the final sector, turn 9 there. But Guy Swarbrick has actually just set a purple sector 3 on his previous attempt by the looks of things. He is absolutely flying on circuit at the moment as he heads round the final for the final time this evening for himself there, 25.1 through sector 1. It's not quite as quick as what we've seen from him so far, but let's see what he can do towards the end of this lap. We are yet to see a time from Colin Knief. I can tell you actually that according to the survey, he has just posted a time. He's now getting ready to start his quick lap. It will be his final lap attempt as well, so he's got one quick lap attempt in this session. He's gone purple in sector 1 at 24.5, absolutely blistering from Colin Knief with very little in the form of qualifying running this evening. He is meaning business here. Will Inglis has left the session, so we're not quite going to know where he sits. Will Inglis, I imagine, will be waiting with bated breath in that Discord chat, if those who are both in it, to see how they are doing as the FPS drops and the PC is struggling with all this excitement as well. Colin Knief purple through sector 2 as well. Surely this is his at this stage. A 32.6 through the second sector, and it's all gone wrong for Guy Swarbrick there, riding over the curbs, and that brings his qualifying session to an end as well. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, competing with Rob Whitney at the moment. There is Colin Knief just in the background, heading round the chicane at the final sector for the final time this evening. So we'll use Alan Matthews as a way of watching Colin Knief head around the circuit here as Alan Matthews comes across the line to... he doesn't improve actually, but Colin Knief takes pole position here at Catalonia at the very last second of the qualifying session. A 1:27.6, 2 purple sectors and a personal best, of course, through sector 3, a 30.4. That is exactly the performance that Colin Knief needed to deliver in qualifying. He has now got a spot on the front row, and it is the best spot on the front row as well. Will Inglis relegated to P2, and that is a bit of a disaster for him. Let's see what happens in race 1. Will he be able to fight back? Well, there's only one way to find out, and it's tuning in for race 1 coming up in just a few minutes' time. Don't go anywhere. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to race one of round 10 here at the Circuit de Catalonia. We have just over 30 seconds until lights out, and everyone is lined up on the grid. It is Colin Knief who sits on pole position. Barry Clayton, not Barry Clayton, Will Inglis rounding out the front row. Barry Clayton, Alex Smith on the second row, Rob Whitney, Alan Matthews on the third row, and then we have John Baker, James Atkins, Guy Scorbrick, Paul Brady, Steve Knight, and Will Inglis. Just having a quick chat with James Atkins, actually apologising profusely for the lack of livery. Still not there in race one because it's downloading. It's finished downloading, but I'm not going to install it mid-race for obvious reasons. And there goes Colin Knief. Wow, is that nerves? Stage fright? I'm not sure. Not quite what to make of that, but the 6 red lights on the gantry. We are following a non-existent car, and we are away. Will Inglis using the push-to-pass system on the launch there. That is not a very useful camera angle either. As we are looking inside a sign, but it is now Will Inglis heading down to turn 1, leading this race at the moment then with very little in the form of challenges. It's all gone wrong for James Atkins there on the inside of turn 1, rides over the curb. I'm not sure if he was pushed or he made contact with something, but for whatever reason he's dropped back after a very impressive qualifying time there, so a shame to see his race come to a bit of a premature end there, as we have Alex Smith now up into P2. After a qualifying that he was hoping to make a bit more progress in, I am sure, but he's made the progress on lap 1 instead. As we head further into this race now, Colin is able to rejoin us, and there's battles going on throughout the midfield here. Here is Rob Whitney versus Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton in P5 at the moment, a bit of a slow getaway for him on the second row of the grid, of course, now dropping back just that little bit further behind now as we head up towards Sector 3, the back straight we're on now, and it is still quite a battle being led by Rob Whitney here as we head down towards turn 10. It looks to be that is John Baker. John Baker leading this pack then by a little bit. He's got a bit of a margin, and something's gone wrong for Barry Clayton there. Rob Whitney got a bit of a tank slapper on there. He caught it. Alan Matthews was in the mix somewhere as well. Barry Clayton, or Guy Swarbrick rather, now being able to overtake Barry Clayton as a result of that. And James Atkins, I'll tell you what, has made some very good progress given his misfortunes on the first corner. He's able to catch right back up to the back of the pack. Of course, the pack actually only been spread by about 10 seconds, so very good getaway for everyone so far as he is battling out. No, there is Barry Clayton battling it out with Guy Swarbrick, and now we're trying to see if James Atkins can find a way past Steve Knight on the start-finish straight now. Alan Matthews up into P4 then has finally got the overtake done on Rob Whitney there as the auto-cam system is trying to check over. No thank you here as we head through turn 2 now. And the pack spreading out just that little bit more now. Everything dying down ever so slightly after a very, very action-packed lap 1 here at Catalonia. We now see that James Atkins has now got the move done on Steve Knight there, as Colin Knief, I imagine, will be on for a bit of a charge in this race. It'll be interesting to see how his lap times develop throughout the session and where can he find himself here later on in the race. But yes, we were mentioning, will it be a redemption day for Colin Knief? And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case so far. Obviously, for circumstances out of his control, by the looks of things, some type of technical glitch. We have seen it happen before. We've seen it happen to the stream before, where Assetto is a tricky mistress sometimes, but unfortunately for Colin, it came just at the absolute wrong moment there, really. And now he will be fighting just that little bit harder for this championship fight now, as we see Alex Smith getting a little bit wrong on the exit of the chicane, on the exit of turn 15 there, or rather the entry to turn 16. He rides over the curbs, gets a little bit upset, but is able to carry on. And there we see John Baker embroiled in a battle with Alan Matthews. Now both of them using the push-to-pass system. Alan Matthews preserving it a little bit longer for the end of the start-finish straight there, but he still can't find a way past. As we see Barry Clayton under-braking. Fantastic move there, heading into turn 1. Dives on the brakes as late as possible, but it's all gone wrong through turn 2. He might have overcooked it heading into turn 1, carried a bit too much speed, but for that reason rode over that curb and is now facing the wrong direction on the entry of turn 3. What a shame for Barry Clayton here. That is not where you want your car to be parked. Luckily is able to rejoin in a relatively safe manner there. No one too majorly affected there apart from Barry Clayton himself. What a shame after such a superb move. It's all gone a bit wrong for him now, but John Baker still involved in the battling. It is now with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews has been able to catch up here as we head up towards turn 9. or head through turn 9 rather, now, and there we see a fastest lap from Colin Keefe, so he means business, that is for sure, as Alan Matthews is trying to stay in that slipstream of John Baker's car as much as possible, heading through turn 10, turn 11 now. Guy Swarbrick getting the overtake done on Rob Whitney. Guy Swarbrick looking very pacey indeed. Will Rob Whitney be able to fight back? Car's positioned on the inside there, but it doesn't look like he's quite got the challenge for him now as we head through turn 12 with these two cars. But someone who is under a lot of a challenge is John Baker as he heads into turn 14 now. Rides the curbs as much as he does. The back end getting a little bit upset. That will play into Alan Matthews' hands a great deal as we head onto the start-finish straight now. He has the benefit of the slipstream as well. And there we see a sight that no one wants to see. It is an RSS Supreme in the rearview mirrors. Very close indeed. They are side by side heading into turn 1. Who is it going to be who comes out on top? It is Alan Matthews by the looks of things. Just that little bit later on the brakes, but composes his car absolutely perfectly for turn 2 and turn 3 coming up just in a second there. And that is absolutely beautiful from Alan Matthews. That move is pretty much secured now unless John Baker can fight back heading into sector 2. It's not too common, but let's see what happens. James Atkins then up into P7. He's recovering nicely from that turn 1 incident earlier in the race. Let's see what he can do further in the field. He's got Rob Whitney up in front of him. Guy Swarbrick up in front as well. This is the battle for the AM race. It's actually going on quite high up the order, in fact. Currently being led by Guy Swarbrick in P5. Rob Whitney splits up the rest of the Anfield in P6 at the moment. There is James Atkins. James Atkins having those issues earlier on, as we just mentioned, staying right on the rear wing of Rob Whitney as we head up through turn 9 now and back onto the back straight, using as much of that immense turbocharged power as possible. Heading into turn 10 there. It looks like there was about to be contact for a second as James Atkins trying to find a way past on the braking, but well defended from Rob Whitney. As we head up through sector 3 now, Rob Whitney just positioning that car in a pretty much perfect place, really, just enough to annoy James Atkins behind, as he can't find a way past. Of course, the circuit Catalonia is quite a challenging circuit to overtake on, and Rob Whitney using that to his benefit. Rob Whitney, we've seen many times, is actually really quite impressive on the defence as we now head onto the start-finish straight, and there is pretty much I've forgotten the word for it. There's a pack of 4 cars heading down the start-finish straight, and they're all using the push-to-pass system. And it looks like James Atkins is going to be squeezed as much as is physically possible, but under braking, it seems to be that he's got that move done heading into turn 1. Just that little bit later on the brakes seems to be a bit of a favourite overtaking spot so far this evening, and it is now James Atkins up into P6. So the battle for the AM race lead then going on in the midfield then, and Paul Brady joins in on the fun as well, finding a way past Rob Whitney on the exit of turn 3. And it is now these three battling out on the podium, really, of the AM running, battling out P5 all the way down to P7. So this will be very exciting to watch as the race progresses. Meanwhile, we have Will Inglis. We haven't seen too much from him so far because after a very clean getaway in on lap 1, rather, he's had pretty much no challenge at all. Alex Smith doing a very nice job in P2, but Alan Matthews has made huge progress in this race in the previous couple of laps. While we were watching what was going on in the AM race, Alan Matthews has had a bit of a clear charge by the look of things and is now all of a sudden putting pressure on Alex Smith as we head down towards the final part of this lap, heading through turn 13 now. It looks to be that Alex Smith is going to have to work for it as we head through chicane, back onto the throttle as quickly as possible. Don't upset the rear of the car too much though, as both drivers execute that pretty much perfectly, I would say. Alan Matthews carrying that little bit more speed through the final corner, I would say. Are we now starting to see that different or that alternate setup strategy of Alex Smith start to fail him ever so slightly? If you look at the speed traps, 278 kilometres through the speed trap for Alex Smith, but it worked through turn 1 that time round, as he seemed to be just that little bit later on the brakes, in fact quite a lot later on the brakes, to try and fight back. But through turn 2 and turn 3, Alan Matthews was just so much more composed, so much more ready for those upcoming corners. He was able to get that move done with relative ease. I think there was a little bit of contact between the two, but no major ill effect as a result of that now, as we head down towards turn 4, turn 5 now, where it is so easy to lock a front left. We don't do that too much, otherwise the tyres will start to scream at you, but both drivers doing that fairly well, I would say. And now Alan Matthews sits in P2. If we compare his pace with the leader of the race, Will Inglis, the only driver at the moment in the 129s, apart from, that's a complete line, apart from Barry Clayton and Colin Keefe. But something's gone wrong for Barry Clayton. It looks like he's had contact with Steve Knight. I believe Barry Clayton was in the battle with Steve Knight at the point in time, and unfortunately has put a big stopper on his race at the moment, as Colin Keefe is now able to get past him. And Colin Keefe on that charge, coming and running in the low 128s. He is trying to salvage as many points as he can from this weekend and put a stopper on Willing Bliss. Willing Bliss only 30 points behind at the start of this weekend, and that is going to be an even smaller gap towards the end of race 1. So let's see what Colin Keefe can do as he tries to reduce that damage as much as possible. I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to try and get the move done on Steve Knight. Now side by side with him as we head down towards turn 10. Under braking, getting that move done. Very nice from Colin Keefe there, up into P9 now. This is going to be a bit of a Colin Keefe special, I feel. We've got 15 minutes to go, nearly halfway through this race already, and Colin Keefe is trying to make as much progress as possible. He's now in the mix. He's now in the field. He's got a bit of a gap to the cars up in front, but once he's with them, I'm sure he's going to put quite the challenge on indeed. As we're going to go on board with James Atkins now. James Atkins has been overtaken by Paul Brady in all of that action. We seem to miss that, but James Atkins is still right on the pace with him if we compare current lap times. A 1:31.3 for James Atkins in comparison to a 1:31.8. That is best lap times rather. It seems to be that James Atkins had a bit of an error on the previous lap, but James Atkins does seem to have the pace to fight with Paul Brady as we head down into Sector 2 now. We're going to, I imagine, see the battle going on for a little while. Meanwhile, the leader of the race, just a few car lengths up in front, the Guy Swarbrick in P5 heading up through turn 7 now as we go on board with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews breaking away just that little bit from Alex Smith now, but he's not able, more importantly, for the championship fight, able to catch up to Willing Bliss. Willing Bliss keeping him honest there, staying in the 129s. Alan Matthews hasn't quite broken that barrier yet. In fact, Willing Bliss in the low 130s at this stage in time, so trying to, I imagine, look after those tyres, make sure there's enough fuel in for the end of the race. Yeah, what a shame that Alex Smith alternate Saturday Stratum, or alternate Saturday Stratum? That's a new one. Alternate setup strategy. There we go. As we have the interesting, I imagine we'll go artistic camera angle there, coming into force once again. Not quite working out for him. He's still definitely in the running. Of course, a spot on the podium. That is by no means anything to complain about. But it doesn't look like he's quite got the straight line speed to fight with the other cars around him, so I imagine it's a case of keeping the nose clean and just trying to stay ahead of the competition. As speaking of staying ahead of the competition, James Atkins does just that on the entry into turn 1, now fighting with Guy Swarbrick by the looks of things in just a few moments time. If he keeps up this pace, let's compare their pace. We'll get the data out once again. It is James Atkins who comes out on top by the tune of about a second. So James Atkins really classed the field in the AM running at the moment, but I must say the AM running in the past few rounds, it seems, it really has, well, they're all kind of classed the field. They really have done a commendable job. The progress we've seen this year in particular in the AM running, in the standards of the AM running, has absolutely shot up. Everyone doing an immense job in that field at the moment then. As we head up through the S's, if you will, I imagine they're sort of an S, a bit of an open S at the top there, but the S's nonetheless. We see James Atkins copying Guy Swarbrick's every line there as he heads into turn 10. Not quite able to get past yet, but still very much in the mix at the moment as we head up through turn 12 now. It looks like Guy Swarbrick taking a bit of a wider line. That's actually the line that I take whenever I run around turn 12. I'm not quite sure if that's the correct one to do, but James Atkins is trying to do the opposite nonetheless, but he doesn't want to do that too many times. Rides over the curb heading into turn 13. Imagine that caused a little bit of underside damage there, but more importantly for him, it's slowed him down big time, has given Guy Swarbrick a bit of breathing space, and has now put him under an immense challenge from Paul Brady. Paul Brady carrying so much more speed through turn 16, which is the push past system in full force there, being able to keep Paul Brady behind, but for how long now, as James Atkins just about in front. James Atkins seems to be very, very eager on the brakes by the looks of things, able to keep Paul Brady behind for now. So James Atkins has delayed his own charge against Guy Swarbrick just that little bit now as we enter the halfway stage in this race. Meanwhile, Colin Keefe, fastest lap of the race so far, 1:28.3 on this time of asking. Looking very, very pacey indeed, and there is what I feel was inevitable. John Baker now able to get past Alex Smith. Alex Smith losing that spot on the podium, and maybe he can fight it back now as we head up towards turn 9. We'll have to watch out and see, as by the looks of things, Alex Smith running a little bit wide. Are we maybe starting to see that setup is overworking the tyres ever so slightly? Not that I'm in any way, shape or form a race engineer, or I know anything about making or setting up a race car to go fast. I can just about put the correct amount of pressure in the tyres before setting off on a long journey, and that is kind of the limit of what you should trust me to do when setting up a car. But John Baker seems to be working for him, his setup seems to be working for him regardless, as we see him getting the move done on Alex Smith now. Meanwhile, Willing Bliss out in front, seems to be under very little challenge indeed. About 10 seconds the gap to P2, doing a very nice job out in front, that is for sure now, as we go on board with who will we go on board? We're going to go on board with James Atkins once again. Hopefully, no more commentators' curse for him as we come down the start-finish straight now. All three drivers in the AM running on screen at the moment, using that push-to-pass system as James Atkins positions his car up the inside. Who's going to be later on the brakes? I have a feeling I know the answer to this one. James Atkins, a bit of an overtaking favourite of his is turn 1, and he gets the move done heading into turn 1. Of course, the car looking very, very unhappy. Well, not looking unhappy, but looking like it was going to run very wide heading through turn 2, carrying so much speed through that first part of that corner complex there. But regardless, he has got the move done for the lead of the AM race now. Let's see what Guy Strawberry can do to fight back, rather, as we have Colin Keith setting purple sectors as we progress throughout this race. Not quite back in with the rest of the field yet. He's going to be running P9 a few seconds off the likes of Rob Whitney. I imagine he'll be ready for a battle towards the end of this race. We've got 7 minutes to go now in this session. As James Atkins looking very pacey indeed. His previous lap at 131.9, and this looks to be a personal best for him so far. Not quite the likes of Colin Keith's purples, but still some very good progression on display here as he's now been freed, now has some clean air, the fuel load getting lighter as well. This should bode well for his current race pace. Let's see what he does towards the end of this lap now, heading down through sector 3, heading up to turn 13 as Paul Brady gets moved on Guy Strawbrick. What's happened to Guy Strawbrick's pace here? Is he starting to drop off just that little bit, maybe overworking those soft compound tyres a little bit too much? As there is a little bit of a corner cut there, the car looking like it wasn't ready to make that corner, so maybe the car not quite in the same happy window it was in at the start of this race. Correct me if I'm wrong, Guy, but I believe Guy uses the same setup as Colin Keith. Of course, Colin very graciously provides everyone with a setup, and that is the one that Guy Strawbrick uses, I believe. As we see a couple of cars using the push-to-pass system on the start-finish straight, I believe. Once again, we're using the lost belief here, with Paul Brady and Rob Whitney, as we have actually a bit of a battle forming up between Rob Whitney and Colin Keith in a moment. There's about 1.5 seconds between the two cars, but there's about 4 seconds lap time delta per lap. So at some point on this lap, these two are going to butt heads and get ready for a battle. Will Rob Whitney's defensive skills be enough to keep the very fast Colin Keith at bay as we head into sector 2 now? There's only one way to find out, and that is to watch how these two can race each other as we head up towards, head through turn 6, which isn't too much of a corner at all in these cars, and get ready to head through the mid-sector onto the back straight as well. James Atkins, though, 130.6, his best lap of the race so far. He is looking very, very comfortable indeed, heading through this lap now. And there is Colin Keith round the outside on the brake and getting that move done on Rob Whitney into turn 10. So looks like that corner reprofiling certainly doing the job that was intended of it. Doing a very nice job of promoting some overtaking there. And there is Guy Strawbrick, just for an added bit of pizzazz there, if you will, as well. Guy Strawbrick's pace seems to be disappearing from him a little bit. I'm not quite sure what's going on in the later stages of race 1, but it's not quite what he wants, I am sure, as we see him using that push-to-pass system now on the exit of turn 16, trying to keep Rob Whitney at bay. But Rob Whitney also using that push-to-pass system as he weaves to try and break the toe. That opens up the inside, though, for Rob Whitney even. They are side by side. Who's going to be later on the brakes? It looks to be that is Rob Whitney under braking, getting the move done on Guy Strawbrick. Bit of a race to forget in the end for Guy Strawbrick by the looks of things, although he's fighting back through turn 3. Of course, he was scrubbing a little bit, scrubbing the front tyres a little bit too much through turn 3 at the start of it. As we get later on in the race, the tyres are going to get quite sensitive to even the start of turn 3, and by the end you're going to be understeering and scrubbing off speed. So maybe that is what Guy Strawbrick is banking on at this point. But we're going to go back on board with Colin Keith because he's got his next target in his sights, and that is Paul Brady, about 1.5 seconds up in front of him. And it looks to be that Colin Keith really has found the groove now. 24.6 through sector 1 that time round. And meanwhile, Paul Brady's car was just a little bit upset heading through turn 7 and turn 8. But that means that Colin Keith is only going to be even more excited for a bit of a move coming on in just a few corners' time, I feel. Speaking of a bit of move coming on, perhaps, it looks to be that Alan Matthews, now he's got past, well, he hasn't got past now, he's got past John Baker. It looks to be that he's been whittling away at the lap times quietly, and now his best lap is actually better than Winnie Liss's best lap. In terms of current pace, he's actually about 1.5 seconds quicker than Winnie Liss. So some very quick napkin maths means that in a few laps time, that's how technical and detailed we're getting, a few laps time, we could potentially see a battle between Will Inglis and Alan Matthews. Will that be enough though, with only 6 minutes left on the clock, as Colin Knief is able to get the move done on Paul Brady? By the looks of things, just got a little bit quicker out of the exit of turn 16, and as we started the lap, Colin Knief up into P6 then, so recovering a decent amount of points from this race despite how it started for him. A very impressive drive from Colin Knief so far. Of course, for the likes of Guy Swarbrick, Rob Whitney, Steve Knight and Barry Clayton, this bodes very well for the reverse grid race coming up in just a few minutes time. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamic of this pack changes when the order is completely flipped on its head, and James Atkins will have a livery as well, just to add more to the attraction of race 2 coming up in a few minutes time. As we see Alan Matthews not quite able to charge as much as I thought he was, then maybe it was just a bit of a quick lap. Currently still sat at about that 9-second barrier. It is so difficult to think a little bit differently, to try and adjust your head, to try and charge towards someone who you can't even see on track at most points. So a very impressive drive for Alan Matthews regardless. And there is Alex Smith. Alex Smith looking like, was he bouncing over the curb a little bit through turn 15? I think he might have been. That's only going to slow him down. He's still keeping on the heels of John Baker. It's just a shame, I think, that setup not working for him. He could have been very much in the mix indeed, because if this setup is a bit of a disaster, he is still showing some impressive pace regardless of that fact. As we're going to go on board with James Atkins. James Atkins now Colin Knief's next target as we head down into turn 1 once again. Of course, if that move is only going to happen at turn 1, it's not going to be as easy for Colin Knief as it has been so far in this race, because we know James Atkins is a bit of a turn 1 specialist, it turns out, as we now see the gap stands about a second between the two cars. So he's certainly going to have his work cut out for him, because Colin Knief is about 4 seconds quicker at the moment. He's just set his personal best lap once again, the fastest lap of the race, and it's in 27th, folks. It's a 127.8 this time round. He's absolutely flying, and there he goes up the inside. The move secured by Colin Knief as he heads through turn 5. I said it wasn't much of an overtaking spot, or any part of sector 2 really, apart from the end when he heads into turn 7, but Colin Knief has made it work as he heads up through turn 9. He's up into P5 already. James Atkins then leading that AM race, about 6 seconds behind is the rest of the AM field, and James Atkins is doing a very impressive job up in P6, then leading that AM race at the moment. So Colin Knief has a few seconds before the next car, that is Alex Smith, and I imagine with 3 minutes or near enough 4 minutes plus another lap, we could see a battle between Alex Smith and Colin Knief. There's certainly the pace delta in it for that to happen. It should be happening in the next couple of laps. In fact, John Baker is only about 8 seconds ahead of Colin Knief. You never know. We could see a battle for the podium for Colin Knief potentially. I don't want to go too extreme, but at the same time I don't want to rule out any type of late race misfortune to anyone on the podium. We've seen that happen before, and just the raw pace that Colin Knief has as well. It's only getting better and better. Well, it's very much staying consistent. Not to say that's no bad thing, because that's 127.9. He's absolutely flying at the moment, but we could see potentially a spot on the podium for Colin Knief if he plays his cards right. We can only wait with bated breath, folks, as we now going to go back on board with Will Inglis. We haven't seen too much from him in this race. Just doing a very nice job out in front there, leading this race by about 8 seconds at the moment. So we are 14 laps in, and yes, a very impressive job indeed from Will Inglis. This is exactly the type of race that he needs in his championship fight against Colin Knief. We know Colin, no matter what he does, is going to be able to fight for some very good points indeed. He has in this race, it turns out, despite missing out on half of lap 1. But this is exactly what Will Inglis needs in order to try and close up that championship gap. It's about 30 points, and with not that many rounds to go, that is a pretty difficult task to try and close that up. But Will Inglis seems to be doing it at the moment. He seems to be doing everything that he needs to do. It went well for him in Baku, it's going well for him in Barcelona so far, as it looks like the rest of the field, ignoring the likes of Colin Knief. Colin Knief has actually now found a way past Alex Smith. In all of my ranting and rambling about how Colin Knief could end up on the podium, he's now got closer to the podium, as we see him getting past Alex Smith. Alex Smith now down into P5, and all of a sudden it looks to be that maybe we could see James Atkins battling with Alex Smith on this lap potentially, although it looks to be that was a bit of an error for Alex Smith on the previous lap. 138 is by no means representative of the pace that he currently has in this race. But James Atkins, that'll be spurring him on a bit as we head through turn 1 with him now. He could be, I imagine, fancying P5 back, and that will be a very impressive feat indeed if we can see him take a spot in the top 5 in this race. Colin Keith then is only 3 seconds off John Baker out in front, only 3 seconds away from the podium. He's currently about 4 seconds, or no, 3.5 seconds a lap faster than the podium. You do need a bit of extra pace underneath you if you want to get the overtake done, especially at a track like Catalonia. But if there's any man to do it at the moment, it is Colin Keith, with such a pace delta, with such an impressive charge on. He hasn't put a single foot wrong after rejoining. And it looks to be that all of a sudden John Baker could have his work out for him. He wants to keep this podium. I imagine this will be a bit of a Colin Keith highlight. We've seen many of them over my short time race or commentating on this racing, but we're going to go on board actually with Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton. It looks to be Alan Matthews had a bit of contact with Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton, of course, a bit of a race to forget for him. Alan Matthews compromised in this race by the looks of things by an incident. Not sure who was at fault there, but for whatever reason he's still able to carry on just a few seconds down the road, and that pretty much secures Willing Gliss's win there, so congratulations Will. Who knows what could go wrong though later in this race, as we now see John Baker will be very much aware of Colin Keith's presence in his rear view mirrors. As we see him still setting purple sectors this late on in the race. He's getting ready to challenge John Baker up in front, and there is James Atkins getting the moves on Alex Smith. Alex Smith trying to fight it back heading into turn 1, but very well defended from James Atkins there, as we're going to go back on board with Colin Keith enjoying this fight for a spot on the podium now with 2 laps to go. John Baker is certainly going to have to work out for him, but we know John has quite a bit of pace underneath him as we head through turn 5, where Colin Keith was able to get the moves on James Atkins. He wasn't quite able to get it done this time around on John Baker. Now as we head down towards turn 7, turn 8, one of the most technical parts of the circuit, John Baker pretty much evaluating that absolutely perfectly, pretty much spot on from John. Likewise for Colin Keith as well, as Colin Keith has been pushing for so long in this race. We're starting to see a little bit of understeer creep in, just trying a little bit too much pace to try and keep up with John Baker, the car in front. Or we're starting to see those soft compound tyres, which have done us so well in all of this season's running, finally find their limit here at Catalonia. It takes a basically last to first challenge to pretty much put a stopper on these tyres. But speaking of put a stopper on things, it's going to be Colin Keith putting a stopper on John Baker's podium hopes as we come down towards the end of sector 3. And we get ready to start another lap, and John Baker's gone a little bit wide. He's gone wide on the exit of turn 15. There goes Barry Clayton. I'm not sure what's happened with him there, but John Baker has conceded the position to Colin Keith. Colin Keith now has a spot on the podium. What an absolutely fantastic drive from Colin Keith so far in this race. It's not over yet though. He's only 3 seconds off Alan Matthews. Can he find a spot? Can he find the P2 spot? Who knows? He's only about 2 seconds off Alan Matthews. We're on board now with Willing Gliss. We might stay on board with him, but we are very much keeping a very careful eye on that delta between Alan Matthews and Colin Keith. Colin Keith, absolutely superb job from him in this race. I've seen many impressive drives from Colin Keith, but I haven't seen one this impressive in a very long time, because not only has he managed to find his way from absolute plumb last to a spot on the podium, he's done it in what has been a very competitive field as well. And all of a sudden we're now seeing that these two are only tenths apart as we head up into turn 7, turn 8. Alan Matthews really feeling the pressure now, and the pressure's made him crack. It's made him crack at turn 7. He's ran wide, and now it is Colin Keith in P2 after what has been a bit of a disaster start to the race for him. He now finds a second spot on the podium. Congratulations, Colin. And that is not what Willing Gliss wanted to see. What Willing Gliss does want to see is the checkered flag of this race. He's heading around turn 16 now, and he's going to see that checkered flag. He's going to be the first to see the checkered flag as well. Congratulations, Will. Very well executed race. You take home the race 1 victory here at round 10 at Catalonia. And there is Colin Keith. Colin Keith, absolute driver of the race so far, it must be said. There's been some very impressive drives on display this weekend so far, but as I say, Colin Keith absolutely takes that accolade here as he comes down towards the start-finish line there to take the checkered flag. P2 for Colin Keith. Congratulations on a superb drive there. Likewise for John Baker, a very commendable P3. Commiserating to Alan Matthews losing out on a spot on the podium just at the very end there. And here is James Atkins, a very impressive drive as well. After a bit of a disaster at turn 1, he takes the race 1 victory in the out-running as well. Congratulations, James, and you're going to be rewarded with delivery in race 2 as well. Here is Alex Smith coming across the line to take home P6. Paul Grady coming home P7 after a very impressive fight in the out-running. Rob Whitney coming home to take some decent points in P8. Guy Strawberry coming home in P9 in just a few moments' time as well. Steve Knight coming home P10, and Barry Clayton P11 after it has been a bit of a race to forget for him. As we're going to go on board with, I don't think we're going to go on board with anyone, because I don't think we're going to get any victory donuts yet, which is a shame, because Colin Keith, if there ever was an opportunity to do some donuts, it is now, my friend. It is a very impressive drive from Colin Keith in this race, and there is Guy Strawberry coming across the line to take home P9. Well, after a very exciting race one, I am so looking forward to the reverse grid race coming up in just a second. If that's what race one can provide, who knows what the reverse grid can provide in just a second's time. I'm not sure if we even need a reverse grid here at Catalonia. It just goes to show Catalonia can provide some excellent racing. We'll join you in just a second for race two.
And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Just over 30 seconds to go until lights out. We are ready for the race 2 reverse grid. The race it is. Barry Clayton on pole, Rob Whitney in P2, we can just about see. Alex Smith P3, Alan Matthews P4, John Baker P5, Colin Keith P6, Willis P7, Steve Knight P8, Guy Schwarbrick P9, Paul Brady P10, James Atkins P11. And that rounds out the field. The reason we were so late is I was making sure that James Atkins' livery is installed, and I haven't quite found out if it is yet, so who knows. But also interestingly, I'm not sure how much of a voice I'm going to have left in race 2, given how exciting the end, well, to be honest, the whole of race 1 was. But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is the 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away as there's huge plumes of tyre smoke from everyone getting away now. It looks to be that Alan Matthews, or John Baker rather, got a very good getaway, as did Rob Whitney. Barry Clayton losing out there, as he did at the start of race 1. I don't think James Atkins got a livery, unfortunately. I promise I did install it, I promise. But it is now Rob Whitney who leads this race. Barry Clayton in P2, John Baker P3, and Colin Keith has found himself up into P4 already, taking the wide line through turn 3 to try and find a way past John Baker. And he's now side by side as we head up, down through turn 4 and down towards turn 5. There's been contact between Whitney and Alan Matthews. Whitney, of course, starting a little bit further back than what he would be accustomed to in this reverse grid race, and he's lost out to Colin Keith. Yeah, there is confirmation of that. Unfortunately, it looks to be that James Atkins doesn't quite have his livery. It's all apologies for that one, James. And there's contact between Will Inglis and John Baker and Rob Whitney. That's it. Oh no, not Rob Whitney. Apologies. It is Alan Matthews there, and that is not what Will Inglis needed at this stage in the race. Oh, what a shame for his championship fight, because of course Colin Keith was pretty much able to negate any effects of that poor start at race 1. He was able to come out with a P2 in the end. But for Will Inglis, this is going to be a bit of a tall order, a bit of a tall ask, if you will, because that is a pretty disastrous accident. You don't want that to happen at this stage in the race. As is a lock-up for Rob Whitney, that promotes Barry Clayton into P1. But who else has been promoted is Colin Keith. Colin Keith now sat in P2. Surely it's only a matter of time until he can find a way past Barry Clayton, heading down the start-finish straight now, using that slipstream. He is side-by-side with Barry Clayton, and it looks to be he's already edged out. Before we hit the braking zone, and under-braking pretty much seals that move, gets it secured. James Atkins, meanwhile, up into P4, under-braking into turn 1 there, as we've already found out in race 1. A bit of an overtaking favourite of his is turn 1. He's up into P4 already. A very commendable job for James Atkins, leading that AM race at the moment. As we see Barry Clayton actually doing a very good job of keeping on pace with Colin Keith for now, losing out a little bit through sector 1 actually, though, just to counteract my point there as the timing system updates, although their best laps pretty much matching each other. Of course, all the lap times a little bit high at the moment. Everyone's still embroiled in pack battles, everyone's still with a full tank of fuel on board. There, it's going to slow you down just that little bit more, but looks to be that everyone's still very, very eager to get some racing underway now. As we see, Guy Schwarbrick currently running P9. He should be getting ready for a battle with Steve Knight in just a moment's time there. Rob Whitney, of course, after starting so well in this race, leading pack for a lap as well. It looked to be for a little while there. It's all gone wrong for him. Now down in P7. Meanwhile, John Baker, he got a good getaway at the start of this race, currently running P5. And then, of course, Will Inglis, it all went wrong for him just a lap ago. And there is Alan Matthews, in fact. Of course, Alan Matthews and Will Inglis involved in that incident earlier on. Alan Matthews coming out better of it, able to get the move done on Guy Schwarbrick now. In fact, there's a bit of a pack forming at this stage on the lap here, as we see Guy Schwarbrick very eager to rotate, actually, on the exit of turn 15. As we have the run down the start-finish straight now. John Baker, meanwhile, getting moved on, and James Atkins actually up into turn 1. That isn't something you see every day. James Atkins losing out position on the entry to turn 1. Very impressive move from John Baker, that must be. And now we see John Baker up into P4. But for how long? Because we know James Atkins has the pace to compete. Of course, John Baker in the pro running, James Atkins in the AM run. Shouldn't really be competing with each other too much on track. That is against the spirit of the rules, spirit of regulations, as we have Steve Knight actually has a bit of contact to deal with. I believe that was with Alan Matthews. It was Alan Matthews, unfortunately, seems to be a little bit susceptible to incident in race 2 at the moment. That brings Will Inglis right back into the fight for some points, or everyone's going to be scoring points in this race, but you get the point. There is Willing Bliss alongside Steve Knight. This will be very telling actually of how how Willing Bliss will be able to progress through the running as we enter the later stages of this race. Will he be able to claw back some more points later on in this race? There's only one way to find out, and he's being squozed. He's being squozed there, of course. That was a bit of a word soup there. There's so much going on. Very late on the brakes, a little bit too late. Outbraked himself, actually, of course. Contact on the braking, on the entry to the braking zone there, but able to carry on nonetheless. And then we have a fastest lap from Colin Keith. He's broken away from the pack now. He's been given some clean air, and he is using that to his full effect. Of course, he was enjoying a pack battle in the previous race, and now he gets ready for a bit of a different race by the things, where he can calm down a little bit, calm his nerves, and settle in to a bit of a rhythm, and start to have a bit of an easy time if all things go well for him. Of course, we said this race 2 in Baku, and look how that turned out for him. As we have John Baker then currently leading a bit of a pack, leading James Atkins, who we got the move done on at turn 1, and leading Paul Brady as well. Paul Brady right on the pace with these two as well. So we may see what James Atkins would want to see is him and Paul Brady working together to try and let's save. I imagine he'll say to Paul, let's save that battle for later on, and let's try and see if we can progress our way through the order, just to give himself a little more breathing room. Of course, they don't gain any positions in the AM running there, but it doesn't matter. He's not going to be able to work with Paul Brady, because Paul Brady's made a bit of an error by the looks of things. Rob Whitney caught out by that as well. We've had a few cars going off at turn 8 so far in this race. And it looks to be, or rather that being turn 9 there. What a shame for Rob Whitney. That puts Guy Swarbrick up into P7, Alan Matthews up into P8, Willing Bliss up into P9 as well. And that is the type of misfortune that Willing Bliss is hoping to capitalise on in this race. He's got a few cars up in front of him that he can try and get the move done on, so let's see what he can do in this race. John Baker, meanwhile, very much under pressure from James Atkins as we head towards the final part of the lap. And now onto the start-finish straight, as we see push to pass being utilised to its full effect there, and I imagine both cars pretty much in a stalemate as we head down towards the turn 1 there. In fact, both cars are a stalemate in terms of previous lap pace as well, pretty much identical, only a few hundredths apart, as we see them heading up towards turn 3 now. Looks like it's a little bit of oversteer for John Baker there. I believe it was. He caught it though, very lucky to catch it there. Didn't end up over a sausage cable, didn't end up in the gravel, but that has brought John Baker, or James Atkins rather, even closer to the rear wing of John Baker. And now this battle is going to continue on for just that little bit longer, as we see Alan Matthews and Willing Bliss fighting out. We know these two know how to battle each other. We've seen it plenty of times in the single-seater running, and more so I'd say in the touring car running as well. But unfortunately for those two, given the pace that they can demonstrate, it's a little bit further down the order than I'm sure they would like. But I'm sure they're looking forward to a bit of a battle between the two regardless, as we see them heading down towards the turn 6 complex, turn 7, turn 8 rather, as I mentioned in race 1, turn 6, not that much of a corner in such capable, such high downforce cars. As we head on board with John Baker once again, he hasn't slipped up. Well, he has slipped up a couple of the times, but he's not quite messed up enough to allow James Atkins to just storm past James Atkins. Is working out for him. As we see Alex Smith seems to be running a bit of a different setup. He's, I imagine, totally not on his own kind of assessment of how things went, or his own talent or his own skill. Has obviously only just listened to me there, and has made setup changes because he's got a much higher top speed in this race. Or maybe he's remapped push to pass. I didn't think of that actually. I didn't think it could just be push to pass, but the car's looking very unsettled there as he heads through turn 1, turn 2. Of course, we have seen drivers in this season's running not have a push-to-pass system mapped to their controls, and as such have been a little bit down on power in the straight lines. But even if that wasn't the case, he is back on pace, back on basically even back on a word soup. There's just so much going on in this evening's racing there, as John Baker gets a bit of a tank slapper on the exit of turn 5 there. Very, very lucky to keep hold of it at such a high speed as well. It is quite an impressive feat to keep control of these high downforce cars in circumstances like that, and John Baker has done that while keeping James Atkins at bay as well. That is the type of error that James Atkins wants to see. He wants to see those little errors that will be boosting his confidence while draining John Baker's confidence, the car in front of him.
there, because he knows he can either force an error or just carry a little bit more pace if he's feeling a little bit more confident in the circuit. But for now, it is still John Baker out in front, and unfortunately have our first DNF of the evening as we go back on board now with Paul Brady. Paul Brady then under pressure from Guy Swarbrick by the look of things. This isn't in battle for the AM race. That is, of course, lying with James Atkins out in front, but still in battle for important points nonetheless. P2 versus P3 in the AM running. It is Paul Brady on that second spot on the podium at the moment. He's got it by about a second. Let's see what Guy Swarbrick can do, using that push-to-pass system a little bit earlier than Paul Brady on the exit of turn 16, and having the benefit of the slipstream as well. There, as we see Alan Matthews and Whitney Bliss also using that push-to-pass system as they head down the start-finish straight, and as they continue to enjoy their battle with each other. As we're going to go on board with Colin Keith nearly at the halfway stage in this race already. He has had pretty much no challenge since he found himself in the lead of this race. About 8.5 seconds clear of everyone else. Not quite what we saw in race 1, where he was about 4 seconds a lap faster than everyone else and was making some very impressive headway indeed. He is still making very impressive headway, but hasn't quite dipped into that 127 range. That fuel load not quite dropping down enough for him yet, but I'm sure as well there'll be red mist in Colin Keith's eyes in race 1 as he sees those cars that he's trying to pick off out in front of him. He hasn't got the benefit of that this time around, which it really can help, especially in the likes of an endurance race setting, as he's now on the start-finish straight with looking rather lonesome, it must be said. He's got a car 9 seconds behind him, and then pretty much nothing else for a little while in terms of traffic to contend with. He doesn't have to worry about anyone else other than Steve Knight. Steve Knight currently navigating turn 8 at the moment. He's looking pretty lonesome out there, so apologies, Colin, but you're doing a very nice job regardless. As we're going to go on board with John Baker still leading these two then, but for how long? Because there is James Atkins with the slipstream, with the push-to-pass system as he comes up on turn 1. A favourite overtaking spot of James Atkins, but defended very well indeed by John Baker. John Baker positioning that car perfectly, so it's gone wrong for Guy Swarbrick there. Guy Swarbrick going off at the chicane by the looks of things, dropping down to P9. What a shame for him. That promotes Whitney Bliss and Alan Matthews into P7. Whitney Bliss actually getting the overtake done on Alan Matthews now as we head into turn 1. Whitney Bliss up into P7 as we brake disc glowing red hot there, with all of that force heading through it as he tries to slow the car down from its highest speed point on the circuit to one of the lowest. There, he's now half a second clear of Alan Matthews and doing a very impressive job to try and recuperate some points. There is Paul Brady. Paul Brady now looking rather lonesome, much like Colin Keith, owing to Guy Swarbrick's misfortunes at the chicane there. And there is the overtake. That was looking somewhat inevitable, although John Baker, very impressive job to defend it there from John. It is now James Atkins up into P4. Some very impressive pace on display from James Atkins. Imagine it won't be too long until we see James joining the pro ranks, because he certainly deserves it to look at the pace on display here. In fact, I think everyone in the field really could be classified as pro runner. I think there's some very impressive pace on display here this evening. Everyone within a minute of each other, everyone still on the lead lap at the halfway stage in this race. That is not a given in this type of sprint race series, especially in a reverse grid setting as well. As we go back on board now with Whitney Bliss and Alan Matthews, the two one of the many little packs of battling cars in this race so far, as we have about an 8 tenths of a second gap now building up between Whitney Bliss and Alan Matthews. It looks like Whitney Bliss has been somewhat freed now that Alan Matthews is behind, so we're going to go back on board with James Atkins and John Baker. As John Baker is he able to keep up with James out in front? It doesn't look like that is the case at the moment if we compare previous lap times. If we compare previous best lap times, they are near enough identical. Those 130.6s that we were rather impressed by before are still their best laps for each driver, but James Atkins nearly matching his best on the previous lap, whereas John Baker sat in the 132s at the moment. So it looks to be James Atkins has the upper hand at the moment, but let's see what happens later on into this race. As John Baker, we've seen a couple of little kind of upset moments from the car so far, and that was another one of them heading into turn 7, but able to keep a hold of it, keep a grasp on things, and still very much in the fight for P4 if he can recollect his thoughts, maybe get the car into a bit of a happy window in terms of tyre degradation, fuel remaining on board. He can push towards that P4 up in front of him there, as Colin Keith goes fastest around the circuit once again, a 128 flat this time round. He's looking very impressive in the lead of this race. Let's stay on board with him for a lap. We haven't done that so far this evening. Let's just see what it takes to dominate a
a lap board, if you will, as we go on board with them now, as we head through up into turn 4. Very late on the brakes there, just about kissing the apex. Back onto the throttle midway through the corner, unwinding that steering wheel, kissing the outer apex as well. As we mentioned in race 1, very easy to lock up the front left tyre, but not a problem for Colin Keefe here, riding over the curves a little bit, riding onto the runoff area just that little bit to try and use as much of the track as possible, heading up through the turn 7, turn 8 complex now. Very technical part of this circuit. We might go on board for an internal cam view if we can there. No, what we've accidentally done is gone on board with me. So there is an Alfa 75, just in case you had forgotten what a magnificent machine they are. Here's the interior of an Alfa 75 that has been sat on quite some time now. I imagine we'll need a bit of service after that. We go on board with James Atkins now, where it looks to be that he could soon find himself with a spot on the pro podium if he plays his cards right. There is Alex Smith, the car up in front. We're going to go back on board with Guy Sorbeck and try and get that interior cam view sorted for you there, as we see. Now it looks to be that we're going to start on the lap with him indeed. We're going to go cycle through the TV cameras, and there we go. This is the play ball. So we will eventually, I'll pick a view that we want. There we go. All very professional broadcasting standards here in the AROC Racing Leagues, heading up through turn 2 then. Just very, very smooth with his movements there. A little bit of a snap heading into turn 3. Imagine to try to kind of wrestle the car and to try and get it to do exactly what it wants it to do. A very, very tricky corner to master is turn 3. One on line, absolutely superb. The balance between just scrubbing off speed and unsteering and carrying enough speed is a very fine line indeed, as we see him just unwinding the steering wheel to head down towards turn 6 once again. Not much of a corner at all, so very little steering input there. And now the technical part, turn 7, turn 8, riding over. You want to get very close indeed to that little yellow sausage curve there. We don't want to ride over it, it will upset the car at such high speed and you'll end up flying there. Pushing the track limit as much as possible on the exit of turn 9 to carry as much speed as possible before hitting the brakes for the reprofiled turn 10. And now unwinding the steering wheel once again. A little bit of an easier task on this reprofiled circuit compared to the previous one. I think it's a fairly positive change indeed now, as we see him heading down towards sector 3 now. The chicane coming up in just a moment. We've seen a few cars ride over that sausage curve there, but no such issues for Colin. They're getting very close to them now as he tries to eke out as much lap time as possible, and it is a very fast lap indeed. Purple through sector 1 and sector 2, and now just a run down to the straight, to the checkered flag, well, not the checkered flag, rather start finish straight. A 1:27.7. What a lap to go on board with him for there, as he goes for his fastest lap of the race, and I believe that's quicker than any lap we saw from him in race 1 as well. So there is a bit of a Colin Keefe masterclass of Catalonia for you, as we go back on board with Whitney and Alan Matthews as they are battling out, heading down towards turn 10. Paul Brady not too far away from the mix as well, as these two are slowly bringing each other up through the running. Now Willie Bliss sat in P6, an impressive job from him so far. As we see as well, one to watch out for is James Atkins. James Atkins sat in P4 at the moment. Looks like in terms of current pace, he has certainly got an answer for Alex Smith, a couple of tenths up, and they are very close indeed. So we're actually going to go on board with them as we see them heading up through turn 2, turn 3. I imagine we didn't quite see it in time, but I imagine James Atkins probably trying to move into turn 1. I wouldn't be surprised he has pretty much got that corner nailed as we head through turn 4 now. It looks to be that gap building out just a little bit, but by a little bit I mean 0.5 of a second, so still very close between those two now, as we go back on board with Whitney and Alan Matthews as they head up through turn 2 and turn 3 themselves. And it all looks to be some fairly enjoyable, pleasant running for these two. They've been with each other for quite a few laps now, and that doesn't show any signs of stopping really. They might not want to be overtaken. I'm sure Alan Matthews will eventually try and find a way past, but for now I'm sure he's just enjoying a little bit of company on track and just enjoying the race and the sights of a beautiful Catalonia circuit as well. As we see Alex Smith is probably not enjoying the sights of the Catalonia circuit at the moment, as the car looking a little bit unhappy actually as we head through turn 11, rides over the curbs, goes a little bit wide on the exit of turn 12 as well, and this is not exactly what you want when you're trying to keep a very quick car at bay. And is now 0.5 separating the two. As he goes wide, does Alex Smith, runs wide on the exit of turn 15. That doesn't unsettle him too much, luckily able to just about carry on enough speed. Both of them using that push to pass system now, as is James as is John Baker as well. But even before we entered the braking zone for turn 1, James Atkins gets a move done. You see Alex Smith very, very fast to dive back into the slipstream
of James Atkins' car in front, but it wasn't enough, unfortunately, to fight back for it. Underbraking into turn 1. James Atkins then in P3 at the moment. If he was a pro runner, a spot on the podium for James Atkins. A very impressive job here for him then, as we go back on board with Will Inglis and Alan Matthews. Will Inglis able to break away just that little bit now, as we see James Atkins able to break away from Alex Smith as well. As we go back on board with Colin Knief, I don't think we'll need to do another qualifying session with him, because we've seen a pretty much perfect lap already. I'm sure he has many pointers for himself as to how he could improve. He's done a very good job indeed, as we see. Now I'm going to go on board with John Baker in P5 at the moment, because I imagine pretty soon he's going to have his sights set on Alex Smith as well. Alex Smith then, even with what looks to be apparent setup changes or maybe an adjustment to the push pass system, unfortunately for him, not quite on the pace this evening, but looking still a very impressive job. I'm saying not quite on the pace. He's consistently ran P3, P4, P5, which is a very decent haul of points for him there, but of course not entirely ideal. As we speaking of not entirely ideal, there is John Baker riding over the curve a little bit on the exit of, or the exit of turn 14 rather, and it going a little bit wrong for him, but no major ill effects. As we see the run down, you start, finish straight. Both drivers using the push-to-pass system there. John Baker trying to find a way to pressure Alex Smith just a little bit more, maybe force an arrow up in front or wait for the perfect opportunity to get the car past. So my voice is just about holding up now, as we see. There's gaps still staying very small indeed. Looks like John Baker's car a little bit upset there as we head through that corner, but doesn't lose out too much time at all, as we are now so late in this year's running as well. Of course, only 2 rounds after this. We only have the historic circuit of Monaco in 2 weeks' time, followed by the traditional Canada season finale for the first half of the year's running. I can't believe just how quickly this half of the season's running has gone, but it has been very, very enjoyable to watch indeed. Here, round 10 of a 12-round championship, as we see. If we compare the AM running, actually we focused on the pro running championship so far this evening, but given James Atkins' pace, I feel it necessary to have a look at the AM running as well. We see here James Atkins currently in P2 in the championship, breaking away a little bit from John Baker now, but he will be looking, obviously John Baker being promoted to the pro running, so he is pretty much secured in his P2 in the AM running, but can he close up a 60-point deficit in 2 races? I don't think he can do, unfortunately. So it looks to be that Guy Swarbrick's AM Championship is pretty much sealed at this point in time. So congratulations, Guy, but congratulations do also go to James Atkins for what has been a very impressive rookie season in this year's running. You've certainly got some pace in the league, and I'm sure we'll see you in the pro running very soon indeed. As we're going to stay on board with this battle that's been going on for a few laps then. It seems to be no major change so far, just some very competitive, very clean and very enjoyable running going on with all 3 cars involved then. James Atkins still leading this pack then in P3 at the moment, as there's quite a bit of oversteer creeping in on John Baker's car now, as we see the back end getting a little bit unsettled on the exit of turn 5, able to carry on though. He's had quite a few good catches actually so far in race 2, has John Baker. A very impressive drive from him so far. As you see him running very wide actually on the exit of turn 9, they're running completely into the runoff zone, nearly, I believe, actually probably collecting a bit of gravel as well, but still able to carry on even with that, as we see Steve Knight having to enter the pits for some reason. Not quite sure why that is. Maybe a penalty to serve, a bit of damage that he felt like he wanted to repair, maybe whack on a new set of tyres for a bit of a qualifying charge, if you will, maybe just see how the car handles on a low fuel load in, maybe just trying to enjoy some running on some fresh tyres, who knows. As we see, looks to be Alex Smith ran a little bit wide there, but John Baker seems to be a bit upset on the exit of turn 15, but for whatever reason John Baker now very close indeed to that car up in front, both using that push to pass system. John Baker not utilising it at this stage on the lap, but the run down to turn 1, they are near enough side by side there, as we still see Alex Smith in front defending very well indeed, but John Baker certainly means business now. If we compare their current lap pace, it is it is John Baker comes out on top. His best lap about a tenth faster than Alex's. Likewise, in terms of current lap pace, it is playing into the hands of John Baker as well. So this is John Baker's position for the taking, but will he be able to get it done with just a few laps to go? As we see, actually, Will Inglis and Alan Matthews separating it out a little bit now pretty much in their own race at the moment, it must be said. No major company. They've enjoyed each other's company for a little while as they now start to spread apart, which is a shame to see. Meanwhile, out in front, Colin Keefe setting blistering lap times as the race progresses. But it looks to be that this path is now separated with just a minute to go on the time stream. So a little bit more of a diminuendo to this race compared to what we saw in race 1, courtesy of Colin Keefe's very impressive charge through the field as we settle in to the penultimate stages, or penultimate few laps, or the final stages of this race, if you will. My voice is very thankful for that indeed. I imagine a bit like as we have John Baker actually very late on the brakes into turn 14, was just about able to keep hold of it, got it round turn 15 by the skin of his teeth, and is able to carry on somehow without losing out too much time, it must be said. So a very impressive job by John Baker there. I imagine frustrating, possibly settling in now as we see him trying to find a way past Alex Smith. That car in front of him that's defended so well for quite a few laps now, as we see Alex Smith taking a very aggressive line actually through turn 2, riding near enough over the sausage curve there, but whatever works for him, it seems to be working for him so far, because he's keeping John Baker at bay as we're going to go on board with Colin Keefe for the final lap of this race in just a few seconds time. Can you believe how quick 25 minutes has gone? And there is the overtake. Unfortunately, we're on board with Colin. It's all gone wrong for Alex Smith by the looks of things. What's happened there? There appears to have been a bit of a collision. We haven't... So there's been a couple of times this year where we've seen some type of failure that's caused cars to stop dead in its tracks. Now, I always attributed that to a fuel load miscalculation or something like that. That could be the case for Alex Smith in this race, as we see Whitney and Alan Matthews get promoted up into P5 and P6 respectively. But I have also seen a couple of engine failures actually in this year's running, so don't count that out either. Whatever seems to be the cause, what a shame for Alex Smith. He drove such a good race, as he did in race 1 as well, really, and it's all come to a bit of an end for him here in race 2. What a shame, what a poor way to end his weekend, very much not deserved. As we see now, we're going to stay on board with Colin Keefe for the final time this evening, as he enjoys a bit of a parade lap, really. A very impressive weekend from him. He's probably driver of the weekend, it must be said. Such an impressive charge through the field in race 1, and a very dominating performance in race 2 as well. He's proving why he leads the championship at the moment, and that championship lead extends at the end of this weekend as well. There's been a bit of a Colin Keefe masterclass. I said it might be, and it is certainly redemption for the end of Baku's running as well. It is Colin Keefe who heads round Sector 3 for the final time of this evening, heading through that chicane now with very little in form of a challenge. Heading round turn 16 for the final time then. Only a little wait now for the checkered flag. Weaving across the line. Will we see it? No, we won't. It is Colin Keefe who takes the race 2 victory. Congratulations, Colin, for a very impressive weekend indeed. P2 in race 1 and the race victory in the second race as well. Barry Clayton has quietly led a very impressive race indeed. I said he'll be looking forward to the reverse grid race after a bit of disappointing race 1, and that is certainly the case as he comes around the final corner himself for the final time this evening to take home the second spot on the podium. Congratulations, Barry Clayton, to take P2. Now, third on the road, and technically what would be, if we were a one championship series, it would be James Atkins taking that bottom spot on the podium in third on the road. Very impressive drive from James Atkins, but instead it will be the AM race victory for James Atkins, weaving across the line then, wiggling in celebration. Very impressive drive from him as well to take the AM race victory. And there is John Baker taking home the final spot on the podium. Congratulations, John. P4 on the road, final spot on the podium for you there. And there is Whitney Gliss. Whitney Gliss ends up coming home in P5, so not all is lost. Unfortunately, losing out in terms of points tally compared to Colin Keefe this evening, but still a very impressive drive to recover all the way from plumb last as well. Wingless taking home P5 there, and Alan Matthews coming home P6 as well, and Paul Brady rather will be coming home P7, Guy Swarbrick P8, Alex Smith will be classified P9, Steve Knight P10, Rob Whitney P11. So that certainly has been a very exciting evening of racing here at the Circuit de Catalonia. I am looking forward very much indeed to Monaco coming up in just a fortnight's time, the penultimate round of the first half of this year's running for the single-seater series. and I can't wait to see what that has in store for us. And there are some victory donuts for James Atkins, to the extent he's actually burst the rear tyres. Alan Matthews joining in on them as well. Good to see celebrations all around for what has been an impressive weekend of racing. So for now, that is it from me. I will catch you in a fortnight's time for a race around Monaco. Thank you very much for watching.